All right, this is part 3, starting at concept 22.3 of chapter 22. So Darwin's theory of evolution continues to be tested in a variety of different ways. For example, here we have an experiment from Resnick and Endler, you don't have to remember names, of course, that looked at guppies and killfish, where they transplanted guppies from pike cichlid, these are two different kinds of fish, to killfish pools, a different kind of fish, and they measured their average size and age of the guppies at maturity. Now, pike cichlid preys on large guppies, so guppies that are smaller at sexual maturity than those in killfish pools were in this original pond. But when they transfer them to pools with killfish, but not guppies, what they essentially see, because the killfish preys on small guppies, that the guppies got larger at maturity than those in the pike cichlid pools to prevent them from being eaten. So they grew bigger faster, essentially. And this is what you see after their research. That you don't have to memorize the data in any way or anything. But they concluded that the change in a predator resulted in different variations in the population that were being favored. Bigger earlier means more likely to survive and have babies. So evolution of drug-resistant HIV would be another one. Selects for pathogens that through the chance mutations are resistant to the drug's effects. So we have different strains of HIV that have reproduced more quickly because they're resistant. We all know about bacteria and viruses that can evolve very rapidly and are a very challenging problem to our society, like MRSA, methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus, for example. Certain things are favored. Here you see the HIV in response to medications. Using these medications selects for viruses resistant to the drugs in different patients. This is a percent of HIV resistance, a 3TC, that's the name of the drug, and you can see over time a higher number of HIV gets reproduced because those are the ones that are resistant to the drugs in those different patients. So evolutionary theory provides an explanation for all kinds of observations that we see. Some evidence for evolutionary theory incorporates or includes homology, which is from common ancestry. Here you see the anatomical resemblances between different organisms. They all have the same bone structure in the same order, but the bone shapes and sizes are slightly different, just like the human hand, and they're adapted to their specific environment. Comparative embryology suggests that early on in development, the same Hox genes, they're called, the same genes that are programmed for developing certain things in certain times are turned on, and they look very similar. So in fact, even human embryos have immature gills, if you like, these pharyngeal pouches, much like other organisms, fish and chick embryos and so on. They look very, very similar, and a tail and so on. This is called comparative embryology. There's also vestigial organs, which are remnant structures that served important functions as ancestors, such as the human tailbone would be an example, or wisdom teeth, which we then lose, are considered vestigial organs. You might also consider feet in a snake. Underneath a snake's skin there are bones for feet, or a whale has a pelvic girdle for when it used to be on land. Those are vestigial structures. Now more and more evidence is coming from molecular homologies, where we compare genes that function for the same thing and look at their differences, or their amino acid structure for the same proteins and look for how different they are from each other and from a common ancestor. And we can create evolutionary trees based on these homologies, such as you see here, looking at the amino acid structure or sequence in human hemoglobin polypeptides. If you compare hemoglobin in all these different organisms, human, of course, to human is 100%, but a rhesus monkey has 95% of the same amino acids in the same place for their hemoglobin, and you can compare similarities by looking at these molecular homologies. Biogeography is a separate sort of field that looks at where organisms live and contributed to the theory of evolution. So, for example, here you see two different species of squirrel evolved independently from one another based on their different environments. They're similar mammals, but have adapted to similar environments, but they don't share a very recent common ancestor. They adapted independently. So this we call convergent evolution. And then we use the fossil record to look for differences and look at our descendants and ancestors, and we can make inferences based on what we find. So, for example, certain types of teeth can tell us what the organism ate. So Darwinian View predicts evolutionary transitions, and we assume we see signs in the fossil record. One of the main ones that are talked about all the time is that between dinosaurs and birds, where we should have had dinosaurs that had feathers. They looked like lizards with feathers, and we actually do have fossil evidence of that now, but for many years we didn't. these transitional forms. Here you see the whale and the pelvic girdle, and it even has a femur as well. So this is still considered theoretical, of course, which is about as close as we can get to fact in science, and we're constantly updating our views as more and more evidence and information comes into play. And evolution incorporates many, many different fields within biology, and constantly new research questions are coming up, which makes it a beautiful thing. And we're done.